Corey Wren's kickoff return, I think that was one of the ones where there was a penalty, but how has he done when given those opportunities so far this season? Is he talked about having expanded usage moving forward?
Yeah, I think Corey's done a pretty good job in terms of his role on kickoff return. He's quick, he sees things fast, he hits it. He's kind of a one cut and get vertical guy, which is what you need to be able to make some explosive plays. So, I've liked what Corey has done to this point, and we just got to keep building on that as we go forward.
Trying to carry your pigeon. You on the roughing the punter, should he just not get anywhere near him so that there's not a chance of it being called? I mean, is there anything you guys, because on the replays it looks like a bad call, is there anything that you would instruct guys to not do to avoid being in that position?
Well, to get technical on it, we talk about two different angles in terms of punt blocks. When you're coming through an A gap, we talk about being on the vertical plane to go block the punt. When you're coming from outside in, we talk about being on the horizontal plane. When you're on a vertical plane, we teach one hand to block the kick. So whatever my near hand to the punter's foot would be. So as I'm coming off, trying to block, using that game one as an example, I would just use my right hand. Anytime I get my left arm involved, that's now going to bring my shoulders over, which is going to lead me potentially running into the kicker. Anything that's near hand of the ball allows me to avoid that penalty. So, it's just something that young player we're going to learn from, get better from, and we got to carry over the fundamental into the game.
Hi, Regan.
And then your other role, defensive ends coach, Jermaine's productivity the last couple weeks, I mean, for a defensive end to have that many tackles is pretty impressive. How much of that is his ability, or how much of it is sometimes just effort?
I think it's a combination of both. Jermaine's one of the guys that kind of fits that unique characteristics of a guy who's really talented, who plays really hard. And when you get a guy like that, production skyrockets. And sometimes people think like playing hard should just be how it is, and it should be. But it's also a skill to relentlessly chase the ball, and he has that kind of innate ability to relentlessly chase the ball, and he's very talented. So when you kind of couple those two things together, that's what leads to the great production.
Jerry, back left.
Yeah. Can you give us the definition of what is running into the kicker and what is roughing the kicker? And not to challenge the call that was made Saturday, but what does the rule book say and how do they usually interpret it?
I think that's a tough one because I think it's a very gray area judgment call. I think if you don't pull off at all, and the kicker has and you run into any part of the plant foot as he's going through his kicking motion, that's what that kind of deems the roughing. The running into, I've always thought is more of an incidental contact, whether you were kind of blocked into it or you tried to pull off and just weren't able to totally pull off, but you kind of slowed your progress. How they determine which one is which, it's a little bit hard for me to tell. There are some cases where I think it's a no-brainer roughing and we've gotten running into, and vice versa. So I know it's a tough call, it's a judgment call, and when you're aggressive on pump pressure like we are, we don't want to have any penalties, but we understand that that's part of what goes into it as well.
As a follow-up, and again, not to question that particular call, but are you able to get a interpretation from an official as to, after a game, as to why it was deemed?
Yeah, after the game, anything that is questionable, that we have questions on, we'll always have the ability to turn into the league, and then they respond with the reason things go down. So, and it helps us because it educates us, and it also can help educate our players in terms of just exactly what is being looked for, because obviously it's a difficult job being a referee, because a lot of the calls are subjective. Calling offsides and not, I mean, that's a pretty black and white issue, but a lot of the other calls are judgment, and, you know, it's just part of the game.
That's one back, right?
Coach Norvell said that yesterday's walkthrough, just the way he saw the team, their sort of reaction and the way they handle their business makes him think that, you know, he's got confidence that he's gonna turn around, and he's not talking about 8 years from now. Can you kind of share maybe some of your observations from yesterday and why you feel confident things will turn around here sooner than later?
Well, you know, the challenge of a Sunday practice is, the game is still very fresh. You know, obviously, if the game goes how you want it to go, there's a lot of positive with that. When it doesn't, there's still a lot of raw emotion that comes from what just transpired the day before, on both ends, coaches and players. And, you know, I thought the guys came in with a very workmanlike attitude, good energy, you know, good enthusiasm, especially, you know, coming off of what was a difficult day, a disappointing day, and then, you know, a late plane flight home. And, you know, I thought the energy was good. I thought the want to get better was good. I thought the attention in the team meeting in terms of just the body posture, the eye contact with the head coach as he's speaking, all those things were positive. So I would, you know, I'd agree with what Coach said there in terms of just the way they approached yesterday was a positive.
Coach Fuller mentioned Derek McClendon is a guy that you're starting to see more from. I know Quayshawn has had some moments. That position, that rotation, are you starting to see what you want to see from, you know, the depth of that position?
Yeah, you know, it was what we hoped for coming into the year. Is really kind of the big picture plan was knowing Derek and Quayshawn were guys that we felt like were going to be good players for us. You know, whether they were totally ready to be the featured guys was part of the reason why we decided that getting some older transfers would be helpful, but knowing that they would come along through the process, and I've been really excited in their development so far. Derek's played really well, I think, the last 2 games, and you know, just not even 30 minutes ago, I had him in my office, and we were talking through part of the reason why you see that continued growth from him is the way he approaches his work every day. Derek's a hard worker. He's always been a hard worker. He's a grinder, comes with great energy and enthusiasm to the practice field, and I'm happy for him. He's starting to see the results on the field because he's worked really hard to get to the point where he is right now.
Jared?
Yeah, Coach, you recruited a long snapper from Maryland who's a walk-on, and he did a PSA commercial the other day. Can you talk about him and his sister and that whole story?
I think I can, and the only reason I say that is I don't know all the rules on NIL and if we can promote that or not promote that.
We can't promote that specific PSA, but you can talk about him and his sister as a
Sure.
story.
And your relationship
Yeah,
with that
so
family?
no, James he's an awesome kid. I mean, he's the kind of guy that I would fully trust with anything that I ever asked him to do to get done. I would trust him to take care of my kids. I would, you know, in every way, shape, or form, I trust him because he's got a good heart. I had no real idea that he was even considering transferring, but when I saw him go into the transfer portal and it was legal for us to contact him, it was immediate contact, just because of the trust and the relationship that was built over the time when I was at the last school. And you know, just in terms of the person he was and the person he is, he's got a big heart. He's a caring guy. None of what came out on the PSA surprised me because of who he is, and I just think whatever his future holds, he's going to be successful just because of the way he approaches his day to day.
Okay. Oh, one more for Ira.
Sorry. I'm sorry. You know, Coach Norvell and yourself, I mean, you guys put so much more priority on special teams. I know Coach Norvell, you know, he's taken pride in getting some kicks or punch return for big returns and touchdowns. Are you seeing where that's coming closer in the overall blocking?
Yeah, you know, I mean, when it comes to the return game, you know, there's a lot of things that when you go back and watch the film on a Saturday night or a Sunday, that are positives. You know, the tricky thing about those big plays is that close doesn't count. You know, 9 out of 10 guys being blocked doesn't count. You know, almost hitting the seam doesn't work. And that's where we are right now in our return game. You know, we'll have all the blocks happening except for maybe one. Or if there's a point in time you gotta make one guy miss, we gotta make him miss. You know, and it's not far away, but, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, close doesn't cut it. And having everybody almost blocked isn't gonna be what's gonna spring us to a big play. So are we far away? No, we're not far away in terms of being able to break one out, but we gotta put it all together, and that's absolutely the challenge for this week.